Delegates and ready to go. Welcome in to College Football Now, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us as we are moments away from week number 2 of the College Football Playoff rankings. Who's in? Who's out? We will react to the 12 teams that are currently in the playoff picture when we get those rankings as soon as the first Champions Classic game wraps up. Kansas Jayhawks, Rock Chalk taking on Michigan State right now, and a good one. We'll continue to follow that as we go through the night. I am joined by the one and only Joey Peterson is here with me today. In for Harrison Graham tonight. Joey, glad to have you here. I know you're a big college football guy. You're a big Tennessee fan, so I'm sure you're very curious how the Vols stack up in these college football playoff rankings here.
Yeah, excited. Making my first debut on the main channel tonight on College Football Now Live. Really excited about it. I think it's going to shape up, at least for Tennessee's sake, a lot of where they are in the AP. But I'm really curious to see, the aftermath from the Georgia loss this weekend, Ole Miss, what that does for Georgia, and more importantly, what that does for the Ole Miss Rebels and how they're going to be ranked in this playoff system.
As you guys file in, shout out your favorite team. You already saw me supporting my Jayhawks. Joey talking about his Tennessee Volunteers. Already got all sorts of people checking in the chat. Tim Lee says Penn State. I got Kennedy Peterson saying, let's go, Joey and Tyler. Well, thank you, Kennedy. I haven't met Kennedy yet. When are we going to make that happen? Also saying, go Vols. Greg saying, hi, Ty Man, the Buckeye. Ty Man also said, oh, good, Tyler's here. Good to see you, Ty Man, from one tie to another. Elijah shouting out Penn State. Elijah, come forth. Mr. 305 shouting out Miami. I got Evan saying, roll Tide. That's brutal. Joey, new guy here. You give some shout-outs.
Let's keep it going. We got Kennedy saying go Vols and Nico for Heisman. We'll see if he plays this weekend. We might talk about that in just a little bit.
Heisman chances are pretty much
they're pretty much gone. Maybe next year. We'll see. Omar's Burner says Joey Peterson's Raven flock going down this week. Time in the Buckeyes giving us an OH. Elijah rocking with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Mr. 305, he's rocking with Miami. Evan Johnson saying roll Tide. Omar's going with LSU. Knight Rider saying go Dogs. Sick 'em. Big game this week in Knight Rider. Playoff elimination game, as they're saying. Joseph saying, hey, chat, how's it going, everybody? Unfortunately for Clayton, he's saying Boomer Sooner, man. What's been going on with the Sooners, Tyler?
Fire Brent Venables. More on that later. That's a tease. That's what we call a tease.
That's what we call a tease in the business.
Stay tuned for that. An explanation, by the way, of the new college football playoff format. I feel like I have to explain this about 100 times, but we'll probably have to keep on doing so until the playoff actually gets here. It is the first year of the 12-team expanded playoff. We went from 4 to 12, and what a year for us to go to 12 teams.
Yeah.
The 4 highest-ranked conference champions all earn the top 4 seeds in the playoff picture and first-round byes, meaning they don't have to play in the first round. Seeds 5 through 8 will play at home in the first round, and one group of 6 team is guaranteed a spot. But what's interesting about that is we call them the group of 6, but technically the Pac-2 are listed as independents, so they don't qualify for that, but you get the idea. With that said, do you like the new expanded playoff, type L for like, type D for dislike? Joey, I love the expanded playoff, even if you were one of those people out there that was perfectly content, perfectly satisfied with 4 teams. You can't hate the idea that we get more football, more meaningful football in December and January.
100%. And I think this year has been the perfect year for this to be introduced. Obviously, this wasn't how they planned it, but it's gone to 100% perfection. This year, there are so many teams in the 1 through 12 mark, and maybe even beyond that, that you could see going on a run in late December and in January. And, this is what's been missing from college football, in my opinion. If you have a slow start to the season, it's almost like you're cooked. But this year, you can lose a couple of games early, and if you're a team that gets hot late, and when I think of that, I think of 2012 A&M. Nobody would have wanted to play Johnny Manziel or the A&M Aggies late in the season if they got into the college football playoff. This new system lets those teams that get hot late maybe get some momentum, and they can do something deep.
Think of it like the NFL. How many times have we seen wild card teams that didn't win their division. I think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2021 as a great example of this, that got hot later in the year and went on to win the whole thing. We're going to get the best team winning the national championship, which we haven't always been able to say that. So I like it. Seems like everybody in the chat likes it as well. Before we go any further in today's program, let's tell you about today's sponsor. That is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the place to go for daily fantasy made easy. Here's how it works, folks. When you choose two or more players on any given category, whether it's in football with fantasy points or passing yards, receiving yards, maybe it's in basketball with rebounds, goals, and hockey, all sorts of different categories to choose from. You choose those two or more players, and then you go from there with your entry, folks, as PrizePicks has got a great deal they're offering right now, folks. You can get $50 to spend for free when you play $5. You don't even have to win to get the money. Go to prizepicks.com/SailItS, promo code SailItS. This week on PrizePicks, Joey, I had to talk Chiefs on PrizePicks this week. I'm looking ahead to the much-anticipated Chiefs and Bills matchup on Sunday. Give me my guy, Patrick Mahomes, to have more than 240.5 passing yards and Josh Allen to have less than 32.5 rushing yards. If I put $20 down and both these hit, that turns into $60 on PrizePicks. Play along with us, prizepicks.com/SailItS, promo code SailItS. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. PrizePicks, proud partner of College Football Now. Glad to have them on board here on today's show. Joey, let's go ahead and shift gears now and run through last week's first college football playoff rankings. We'll kind of go through this pretty quickly here. Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, the top five. Georgia and Miami both got upset, and we would imagine they're going to drop quite a bit here.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this ACC is going to shake out. Is there a chance that the ACC can get two teams in, or is it just destined that the winner of that conference is going to be their only bid in the playoff?
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. You got SMU, of course, there, and Clemson, and we'll see what else happens there with the ACC. Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, and Notre Dame made up the list from 6 to 10, and I would think there's going to be some movement as Indiana and BYU continue to keep on winning. Their stock's got to go up.
100%. Coach Sig has got everybody fired up in the college football world, myself included. What I'm excited to see for them is them taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes, not this upcoming week, but the next week. I think that one's going to be a real good test to see where this Indiana team really is at.
Then from 11 through 15, Bama, Boise State, SMU, Texas A&M, and LSU. Bama with a resounding win on the road against LSU this past week. Alabama, I think, is going to move up some spots here at this point, and LSU, third loss, they're out of it now.
Yeah, they're out of it, and I think a few weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, people would have said, hey, a 3-loss SEC team can maybe sneak it in, but now that the SEC has so many teams at 1 or 2 losses, I don't think that's possible. And Alabama, man, doing what's really hard to do, going on the road, going into Death Valley at night and absolutely destroying the Tigers.
And then 16 through 20, Ole Miss, Iowa State, losing to Kansas. That was beautiful. Pittsburgh at 18, Kansas State at 19, Colorado at 20. We got Travis Hunter on the thumbnail today. Colorado Buffaloes, watch out. They got an outside chance to win the Big 12. They could get one of those top 4 seeds.
They really could. And what's been so impressive, in my opinion, is Colorado's defense. Everybody can talk about their offense with Shedeur Sanders and what Travis Hunter does at that wide receiver position, but their defense, and mainly their red zone defense, is really what's kept them in and gotten them the win in a couple ball games this year.
Washington State, Louisville, Clemson, Mizzou, and Army round out the top 25. Mizzou, they still think they're in the playoff picture with that win against Oklahoma. They didn't look good in their 2 losses, though. Army, kind of the talk of the town, still remains undefeated. They got Notre Dame coming up here pretty soon. If Army can win out, it's going to be hard to keep them out.
It will. It's going to be interesting to see how that happens and pair them winning out with the possibility that Boise State might keep winning out. Do you think there's a chance that maybe 2 G5 teams could sneak into this thing?
I could see that. I could certainly see that being the case. And then if Army has a win over Notre Dame, that probably passes up Boise State for the guaranteed spot at that point. They would probably leapfrog a one-loss Boise State, something to monitor there. Those are some of your results from Week 11 in college football. Let's ask you about the Dogs. They're eating the Dogs. Is Georgia a playoff team type wifer? Yes. In for no. Joey, I feel like I already know the answer from you because there's no way you're picking against Tennessee this week. We'll see about Nico's status. But Georgia, they have to win out at this point, and they haven't looked that impressive for much of this season. They haven't played to their standard. That's a team that where this format really impresses because I still believe, Joey, that if they get in, doesn't matter if they're the 12 seed or if they were the 1 seed, Georgia can still win a national title. We talk about getting hot at the right time. I think everybody is hoping Georgia drops one more and gets booted out, keeps them out of there, because if they get in, they can still win this thing.
Yeah, and I'm hoping my Tennessee Volunteers are the one that give them that one extra loss. But no, I could not agree more. They still, at the end of the day, have the best coach in college football in Kirby Smart. And we've seen Carson Beck have the ability. We've seen him put up the numbers.
He just lacked the consistency.
Exactly. He's just lacked the consistency. But what he did last year and what he was doing earlier in the year, this year, before turnovers became a massive issue, it's there, right? He can still do it. The talent profile of that team, both on offense with who they have at the running back position, who they've got on defense with Michael Williams, and that secondary, man, they're a team that if they can sneak in there, I wouldn't want to play them.
Man, how about Hunter Dickinson taking some hard fouls? Take that, Smitty. F Smitty. Everybody spam F Smitty in the chat. If you love college football, the greatest sport on the planet,
amen.
Like the video today. I got only 26 likes right now. I got over 300 people watching. I need at least half of you that like the video. Stop whatever you're doing. Hit the like button. We're bringing you free live coverage on a Tuesday night. Joey and I are staying late. We should be at home eating dinner right now. Instead, we're eating chips out of the cabinet just to hold us over.
Chips
Sorry,
that
Brett.
expire in a week, too, or 2 weeks.
We're still living. We're still alive. Like the video to show us some love. And we're at 42 right now. Let's get at least 8 more. Let's get to 50. Your boy Jordan says, Tyler, when are we talking Jayhawks basketball? Hey, we're doing good. We're beating Michigan State right now. Close game, 68-59. 3:21 to go. Let's see if they hold on. Let's go ahead and talk some college football. Deion, Brent Venables, Michigan, and more. We'll break it all down as we continue here on College Football Now. The playoff rankings coming up in just a bit, but first, let's catch you up on the latest news and rumors in college football starting right now. You're watching College Football Now, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. He's Joey Peterson. Let's get you up to speed on the latest news and rumors in college football. Plenty to discuss on today's program. Could Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, be making a return to Florida State? Also, is Brent Venables on the hot seat in Norman? We will dissect that situation as the Sooners drop another. And Michigan, their NIL partnership is pretty fascinating. Got some good details that we'll get to in just a bit. Before we go any further in today's show, though, I want to make sure you're subscribed for the most in-depth college football coverage you will find anywhere here on YouTube, folks, as we're talking everything from news and rumors, transfer portal, college football playoff, recruiting. It's all in one place right here on College Football Now. Sub it up, youtube.com/chatsportstv. Lock us in. The run of the playoffs is on right here on College Football Now. Subscribe now for free. You'll be glad you did. Let's start with Florida State. Is Deion headed back to Tallahassee? Paul Feinbaum of the SEC Network brought up this possibility. And, Joey, this is something that has been discussed for a long time. Even before Deion was coaching in college football, this was brought up as a possibility. We've seen how much Florida State has struggled here. Could this be the time, potentially, to make this happen?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect combination of two things that are happening that makes this the perfect rumor to talk about in this sport right now. You got Florida State absolutely collapsing. And then on the other side, you got Colorado, just 2 seasons removed from a 1-win season, in serious contention to win the Big 12. And so this makes for the perfect talk of maybe they'll bring the prodigal son back, maybe the prodigal son will return, and maybe take Tallahassee back to where they haven't been in a while.
So let's let you hear from Paul. Hey, Paul. It is the biggest fall off in college football history. Michigan, they lost their head coach. 3-5 losses were projected, but Florida State was a top 10 team when the season began. There's no excuse for that. Mike Norvell has literally lost all of the goodwill he had from a year ago. It's gone. We've both watched a lot of schools bring back their favorite son. Deion couldn't get a phone call from Florida State a couple of years ago, but in fairness, what had he done? Now, he's one of the hottest coaches in the country. A lot of people were wrong, but that doesn't matter. That's who Deion is. He proves people wrong. And you look at what he's done at Colorado. We know about recruiting-wise when they've brought in his own son, Shador, who looks like a top 10 pick. Travis Hunter, his other favorite son, is on the cups of being a top pick as well and a Heisman candidate and all that. But it's not just the recruiting. They are seeing the results here. And the idea of him going back to Florida State, Joey, if Florida State is going to move on from Mike Norvell, which is part one of this equation, are they going to keep Norvell or not? But then part two, if they do, Deion has to be the guy, right? And if you're Deion, this is as good a time as ever to leave Colorado with what you're about to lose in your own son and Travis Hunter.
100%. I was going there exactly. You mentioned his 2 sons. I guess 3 sons if you throw Shiloh in there as well. But they're gone, right? They will not be at Colorado anymore. So you got to ask yourself, okay, what ties does Deion have to the Buffaloes? Well, he has none. They were the first team that maybe gave him a shot as a head coach when you're talking FBS, Power 5 football. But outside of that, he doesn't owe them anything, right? His loyalty still in his core lies with Florida State.
He's still done a lot for them at the end of the day.
100%. And he's proved over the last 2 seasons, just not only in recruiting, but what they've done in wins and losses at Colorado, it's been incredibly impressive. So if Florida State is done with a head coach like Mike Norvell, who last year, just a year removed from possibly going to the playoff, will they give Deion a call? I think they would, and I don't know why he'd turn it down.
So let's ask you now, your chance to weigh in on our pinned comment today. Percentage chance that Deion Sanders goes to Florida State. Scale it for me, 1 through 100. Joey, I'm still not quite convinced they're firing Norvell, so I'm going to put this still a slim chance. I'll go about 8%. What's the number you put on it?
I'd probably lean, I'd say 15%. A little bit higher, but not high.
Get your predictions in the comments section. Let us know. Today's show is sponsored by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the place to go for daily fantasy made easy. Here's how it works. You choose 2 or more players on any given category. Get the choice of more or less, whether you're talking fantasy points in football, rebounds in basketball, goals in hockey, all sorts of different categories to choose from. PrizePicks has got a great deal they're offering right now, folks. They will give you $50 when you play $5 for free. You do not even have to win to get the money from PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS, promo code CLNS. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. Looking ahead to a little pro football action this weekend. Going with my guy, Patrick Mahomes, to have more than 240.5 passing yards, and Josh Allen to have less than 32.5 rushing yards. If I put $20 down, both those hit, that turns into $60 on PrizePicks. Play along with us, prizepicks.com/CLNS. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. Let's shift gears now and head to Norman. Has time run out for Brent Venables as head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners? He took over for Lincoln Riley after Lincoln Riley departed for USC. The first year didn't go so well. They won just 6 games. Last year was a promising season. 10 wins, got to the Alamo Bowl. First year in the SEC, nothing has essentially gone right for the Sooners this year. Their offensive line's terrible. What we've seen from Jackson Arnold, he hasn't really developed in what they thought. Here's a tweet that says the following. Brent Venables lost this fan base. There's no way to look at it. You were supposed to lead our proud program to the SEC, and you embarrassed us. I'm not with this experiment anymore. It's time for a complete overhaul. which will be the first time it's happened at OU. Joey, at Oklahoma, they've had a consistent standard for a long time of how they've gone about things. Bob Stoops was a Hall of Fame head coach. Lincoln Riley did a really good job. But then you look at Brent Venables now, and they've fallen off so much. Skip Bayless, known OU fan, even though he went to Vandy, he said Brent Venables is a great guy who works and tries as hard as any coach and is a proven very good defensive coordinator, but I'm just not sure about him as a head coach. Say what you want about Skip, but I think Joey, he's onto something here. Venables knows defense, and that OU defense has tremendously improved from where it was under Lincoln Riley. But the offense has fallen off so much here, it might be time for OU to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and they've had a lot of injuries, so it's not 100% his fault, but I think he heavily mismanaged the quarterback situation after that game or during that game against Tennessee when he brought in Hawkins and benched Jackson Arnold. And I just think that was a total mismanagement of a really young quarterback. And what blows my mind with all this and absolutely baffles me is when you look at the fact that he signed a 6-year, $51.6 million contract in June. I don't get why OU was in such a rush to give him that kind of money. It reminds me a lot of what A&M did with Jimbo Fisher, right? Ooh. But you could say, hey, A&M was trying to keep him there because LSU, their athletic director, who was formerly an Aggie, was actively trying to get Jimbo Fisher to come to LSU. No one was trying to get Brent Venables in this offseason, and yet they decided to extend him when he really hadn't shown a lot, and now you've got yourself in this situation where people are unhappy, both fans and media guys like Skip Bayless, but you got to look at the fact there's a $44.5 million buyout.
And OU's had some money problems. We heard Barry Switzer say a couple weeks ago that they don't have the NIL funds to compete with Texas, and you got to think that if they are struggling NIL-wise, then it's not going to be easy to pay that buyout for Brent Venables either. Oklahoma's a great job. It's one of the top 5 programs in the country, the winningest college football program since World War II. But I'll be honest, I like Brent as a guy, but they can do better than Brent Venables. Should Oklahoma fire Brent Venables? Type Y for yes, N for no. Get in the comments section. Let us know what you think. We'll wrap up here going to Ann Arbor, and the Michigan Wolverines are getting a giant NIL commitment. Get this, folks. This is from Lucy Gio, the CEO of Passes, who announced this partnership with Michigan, saying the following. Passes is especially proud to partner with University of Michigan and have the opportunity to work with student athletes in the Wolverine community in Ann Arbor and around the world. The assistant AD for NIL at Michigan, Daniel Davison, said this. This partnership with Passes aligns with our university's commitment to innovation and student-athlete development. It gives all of our teams a powerful platform to showcase Michigan's athletics and connect with our passionate fan base while preparing our student-athletes for success in the evolving landscape of college sports. So what this does, the athletes can use the Michigan logo and trademark, which will include a Team 146 tier, which will go directly to the football program. The goal of Team 146 tier is to demonstrate the individual donors can have meaningful impact to the university. So, with that said, this organization, they've signed the likes of Quinn Ewers and Livy Dunn, and now partnering with Michigan. And you think about this Michigan team, they struggled to have a quarterback this year. Mm-hmm. Struggled to play J.J. McCarthy. Well, I heard Dave Portnoy say he would be willing to spend top dollar to get a top quarterback to Michigan. And now you got this as well. For lack of a better term, they're trying to keep up with the Joneses at the University of Michigan. This is big for them, and you got to think, I know it's been a down year for Michigan, but you got the financial commitment there. They're going to be back sooner than later.
Yeah, I think so. And when you look at what we're looking at here right now, this is booster donations from 2005 to the end of the 2022 season. And they're not up there in the top 10s with the likes of the Oregons and the Texases and the Georgias, but they're kind of right now sitting in the top 15 barely. They're sitting right at 15. So they're not getting the financial buy-in that is almost necessary in this day and age of college football to be a top competitor. Now, they were a top competitor last year, and that's because they did so great in the recruiting rankings, but college football is changing year by year. Players are becoming more needy. They want to be paid more. Some of them feel like they deserve to be paid more. And so I think that this partnership with Passes, it's almost like a Patreon type thing for these athletes. I think this is going to be more attractive for athletes to want to come to Michigan. They can make more money. And now these boosters and donors, they don't have to fork over as much because the athletes can go and earn it themselves.
And you think about Bryce Underwood, who they're trying to actively recruit.
Yes.
He's committed to LSU right now, trying to get him to stay in the state of Michigan. If this Passes partnership gets them a few extra dollars, if Dave Portnoy or others could come in, that's the difference potentially in winning the Big Ten, in beating Ohio State, in getting to the national championship game. Joey, in today's day and age of college football, every dollar counts.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it's different sport than it was 2 years ago, and it's going to look different just in a couple years right now. But, man, Underwood's just as close to a sure thing as there is in any high school recruit. So if Sharon Moore and that Michigan team can sweep him out from LSU and get him in Ann Arbor, that would be absolutely massive for this program moving forward.
So there you have it. That is our show today. Big thanks to Joey Peterson for joining me along for the ride today. For continuing college football coverage, subscribe now, youtube.com/chatsportstv. All right, they're about to reveal the rankings. Let's ask you real quick, should Oklahoma fire Venables? I say yes. Joey, you say?
I say yes. I think it's time. Some guys are just coordinators.
Sorry, Brent. All right, here we go, folks. The second week of the college football playoff rankings about to begin right now. Kansas with a big win over Michigan State. Big win. Everybody spam F. Smitty. Got it done. And now, with that over with, between the Michigan-Kentucky, or before the Duke-Kentucky game in just a bit, they're going to reveal these rankings, and we'll see the teams rank 1 through 25. But one thing I want to point out real quick, Joey, is that you're going to see two things. You're going to see the rankings, but you're going to see the seeding.
Yes.
And those are two different things.
Two different things. Yeah, and what's so interesting about the seeding this year is, and we talked about it just a little bit ago, but those 1 through 4 teams, they have buys, and then those 5 through 8 teams, it's a massive advantage. They get to play those games at home. And kind of the teams you're looking at in that 5 through 8 right now are your Tennessees, your Penn States. And I just cannot imagine what those atmospheres will be like in Beaver Stadium or Neyland Stadium in the early winter, playing a playoff game at home, going to be absolutely electric.
First, Joey. Got to get there first. The other thing that I think that is going to catch some people off guard that are still new to these rankings and how they work, a team like, let's say, Ohio State, they might be number 2 in the rankings that we're about to reveal in a little bit.
Yeah.
But Oregon, with their undefeated record in the head-to-head win over Ohio State, is going to be viewed as the de facto Big Ten champion.
Yes.
And so, although Ohio State could be the number 2 team in playoff seeding, they'd be the number 5 team.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be so much that bends on that Oregon-Ohio State game. It was a great game. Oregon just ended up coming out on top. A few mistakes made by the Buckeyes late in that one, but that's going to be one that they look back and when it affects their seeding and maybe their ability to get a bye. And when you look at how important that is, you've played 12 games in the span of 14 weeks. One more week off is going to be absolutely massive, and so they're going to be looking back at that kicking themselves.
And you think about this. With Indiana still in the picture, that loss to Oregon could be very costly for Ohio State.
Yes, yes.
Everybody's been talking, they'll rematch in the Big Ten championship and all that. That's not a guarantee right now.
No, it's not at all. And Indiana's absolutely rolling right now. They're undefeated. They escaped a close one against Michigan, but other than that, they've been absolutely blowing out every single person they play. I'm excited to see them play against Ohio State because their strength of schedule is ranked within the 120s or something like that. Haven't had the hardest competition, but man, what Curt Cignetti has done in just a year's time in Indiana, it's unlike anything they've seen over there.
For continuing college football coverage, you got to subscribe to College Football Now. Joey, this is your first time on college football now, but if people want more Joey talking college football, then we need more subscribers to be able to make more college football content.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So if you want me to come back, if you want me here, if you want Harrison not to be here ever again, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
Let's go over the mock rankings. I was in charge of it this week. So if you're mad at me about Arizona State being 22 when the AP had them unranked, I'll take the blame. Producer Jack forced me to put them in the top 25. Just kidding. Not really. I do
Not
think
true.
they should.
Not true.
I actually do think they should be in the top 25. I have them at 22. Iowa State, I think, still is in the top 25. Just 2 losses. South Carolina at 24, LSU 23, Arizona State 22. Mizzou jumps up to 21. Then I got K-State at 20. Washington State, they still only have 1 loss, so their schedule's not great. And Army at 18. Army undefeated. They're going to continue to keep moving up. As long as they stay undefeated, I think that they'll see a nice climb.
Yeah, I do too. And what's been so interesting about Army and their season is, man, the quarterback play has been phenomenal, which is not something you usually see out of those military
Colorado,
schools.
I have moving up to 17. Clemson at 16. A&M at 15. SMU at 14. Georgia, I think they fall all the way to 13. You think that's fair?
I think that's fair.
Boise State at 12. Ole Miss at 11. Bama, I think, moves up to 10. Miami falls to 9. Still only 1 loss. BYU 8. Notre Dame 7. Tennessee 6. Indiana, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, and Oregon round out the top 5. Indiana cracking the top 5. I think they deserve some respect. You're undefeated in the Big Ten, even if the schedule hasn't been great.
No, 100%. I do think they deserve some respect, and I'm just excited to see that matchup against Ohio State and see what they truly are against top 5, top 10 competition. That's going to be a good one, and it's going to be huge for the Big Ten landscape.
They're still explaining how this all works, so that gives us a few minutes to ask you all. The rankings have not come out yet, by the way. They're still explaining how the rules work. You guys are educated college football fans, so we don't have to explain it again. Is Georgia a playoff team? Y for yes, N for no. Let us know in the chat as they're about to reveal the rankings right now. 25, Tulane was not ranked last week. They enter the top 25. I was impressed with all that they lost. Michael Pratt is gone now, and here they are. They're still a top 25 team. Army did not get the respect I thought. 24 in that rankings. The playoff committee still not high on Army, I guess. Let's see who's going to land at 23. Mizzou at 23 at 7-2. Honestly, Joey, I think that's kind of low for an SEC team.
Yeah, I think it is, but man, their loss against A&M was pretty bad.
22, the LSU Tigers at 6-3. How about that? A 3-loss LSU team ahead of a 2-loss Mizzou.
Yeah, and I mean, LSU dropped 7, but that's kind of what you can expect when you get beat that bad at home.
21, South Carolina, not ranked last week. They have 3 losses on the season. How about that? Not 1, but 2 3-loss SEC teams ahead of Mizzou.
Well, and one of their losses was to LSU, who now they're ranked ahead of. But, man, they've been really impressive these past 5 weeks. Happy to see that for the Gamecocks.
And we've seen the committee from last week to this week. So far, they have rewarded head-to-head. That is a continued thing that we do like to see. That's the way it should be. 20 is the Clemson Tigers. They move up 3 spots. They're sitting at 7-2. The ACC race, they're not completely out of it with SMU and Miami there. At 19, the Louisville Cardinal, 6-3. They jump up 3 spots. That one I feels a little higher for Louisville. I didn't expect them as high as 19.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially that big of a jump.
Washington State at 18, at 8-1, they jump up 3 spots. We said it earlier. Even though their schedule's not great, you continue to keep on winning, they're going to continue to move up. Colorado at 17, so that means that Arizona State's probably not getting ranked.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that was their ceiling, so we could go ahead and say goodbye to the Sun Devils.
So Colorado there at 7-2. I mean, even at 17, that's what we talk about with this playoff picture. You still have a chance.
Yeah, and they had a really impressive win on the road against Texas Tech. They got down early, dug their heels in, fought back, and man, Lubbock's not an easy place to play. Lots of tortillas flying around in Lubbock.
Meanwhile, at 16, we talk about rewarding head-to-head. K-State went into Boulder a few weeks ago and beat the Colorado Buffaloes. They land at 16. They're at 7-2. The Cats, they're not out of the playoff picture either. They could still win the Big 12 title.
Yeah, no, it was a tough loss just a couple weeks ago. It was a hard game, rain game, not the best conditions for what they have out there. But no, the Big 12's still wide open. Anybody could win it.
15, Texas A&M sitting at 7-2. They drop a spot this week. Texas A&M, I'm very curious how this home stretch is going to play out, especially that Texas game coming up. Arguably the game of the year, the most anticipated game of the season in college football.
100%. It's going to be interesting. And Texas A&M's just an interesting story as well. I think they got the hire right. I really like Mike Elko, but what's interesting about them is you got to ask yourself, do they have a quarterback that can throw it 20 yards down the field? And I don't know if they do with Wegman and Marcel Reed.
Yeah. If you have two starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterback.
Exactly.
SMU at 14, they are the second team out. Boise State now 13th. They are in as the highest ranked group of 5 teams. So even though they're ranked 13th and they drop a spot in the rankings, they have the number 12 seed. And talking about those two teams, SMU, even though you're 14, you're still in a really good spot.
You are, and I think you got a chance to beat a really good and sometimes interesting Miami team. That should be a good ACC showdown.
Georgia falls to 12. We projected about 12 or 13, so that lines up. Georgia pretty much has to win out to make the playoff at this point.
Yeah, and I think they still do control their own destiny. It's going to be a big game this weekend, and excited to see that one in Athens.
So Georgia there at that number 12 spot. The playoff rankings so far, SMU at 14, BYU at Boise State at 13, but as the highest ranked group of 6 team, they hold that number 12 spot as the last team in the playoffs. So that means, Joey, for the first time, we didn't have this last week. For the first time, we will have somebody in the top 12, but not in the playoff picture. And that team is, dun, dun, dun.
Well, I guess it's Georgia. Yeah,
Georgia.
they're number 12.
Yes. So Ole Miss is the 11th ranked team and the 11th seed at the moment, and awarding that head-to-head. They beat Georgia
pretty
fair
bad.
And square, beat them bad. Well-deserved them getting in over Georgia there in that playoff spot.
100%. They got to be kicking themselves for what they did against Kentucky just a few weeks back. If they don't lose that game against Kentucky, they're sitting pretty and saying, hey, we're going to make the playoff pretty much no matter what.
And we talk about getting hot at the right time. We know that Ole Miss has got talent with Jackson Dart at the quarterback spot, Walter Nolan, one of the best defensive players in college football. That could be a team that's starting to figure it out in the second half of the season that could make things interesting.
Yeah, after what they just did to Georgia, I don't want to play Ole Miss if I'm any team in the playoff, especially, with what they have at the quarterback position. And, man, there's got some good wide receivers as well.
10, the Alabama Crimson Tide at 7-2. A decisive win on the road against LSU this past week. Jalen Milroe looked fantastic. They look much better right now than they did a few weeks ago when they lost to Vandy and company.
Yeah, what I question with Alabama is, can they run the football outside of Jalen Milroe? We saw what he was able to do with his legs against LSU, but it can't just be on him all the time, especially when you get into these playoff games.
So now the number 9 spot goes to Miami, but they are projecting them as the ACC Conference champion at the moment, so they get the number 4 seed. Miami, not a good loss, losing to Georgia Tech, who's not a very good football team, but all things considered, even with that loss, that's about as good as you could realistically ask for.
Well, yeah, and you knew it was going to happen at some point. They just played too many close games, whether it was Virginia
the defense
Tech.
is terrible.
Their defense is terrible, and Cam Ward, he just wasn't able to get them out of this one like he had so far this year.
8, Notre Dame, which gives them the number 9 seed. So that would put them on the road in a playoff game against 8 seed Tennessee, who is the 7th ranked team. Joey, what a matchup that could be. Tennessee and Notre Dame.
I mean, that's a classic one right there. I like to think Neyland be rocking for that one. And, man, I think Notre Dame's good. I think they're limited at the quarterback position, though. But what they do have is a really good defense. They'll be tough to score on, that's for sure.
I'm still not sold on Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, it's. I think next year will be kind of a really good and telling year to see how his future with Notre Dame will end up. But, man, I'm really interested to see where Tennessee goes after this next weekend against Georgia. And will a guy like Nico Iamaleava play? And here we got BYU up at number 6.
BYU moves up to the 6th spot, the number 3 seed, as the de facto Big 12 champion. That would be a first-round bye for them, putting them in the quarterfinals in the Fiesta Bowl, representing the Big 12 if that was the case. You look at BYU, this is a team, Retzlaff has been fantastic. The BYU, as they call him, has been really good. And that's a team, too. I know that they haven't necessarily always won pretty, but the offense has been really good, and they've gotten better as the year has gone along. I saw them against SMU week 2. They did not look good, and they're much better than they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and it's just going to come down to who's going to win that conference. It's up to anybody. I feel like 5 teams right now could win the Big 12.
Do you think BYU's due for a loss, or is this like a team of destiny vibe in the Big 12?
I think I would lean more towards due for a loss than I would towards team of destiny. They've just skated by too many close games, and I just don't know if they're deep enough to be like, okay, I have confidence that they'll be able to do that for the rest of this year.
Their schedule's pretty favorable the rest of the way, though. Indiana at the 5 spot in the rankings, number 7 in the playoff picture. That would set them up against the Crimson Tide. Indiana, I feel like we still don't know a ton about, despite them being 10-0. They've had a great season, but we're going to know how legit they are when they play Ohio State.
Yeah, the Fighting Curt Cignettis have been one of the best stories in college football this year, going from what they were last year and what they've just been historically to now looking at them undefeated, one of the best offenses in college football. But they do have the lowest strength of schedule, the highest strength of schedule of any other team in this playoff ranking. So interesting to see what they'll fare against Ohio State.
100th in strength of schedule. If they're a one-loss team, they still might not make it.
Especially with Oregon and Ohio State both having such great seasons outside of the game against each other. Ohio State's only lost against Oregon. Oregon yet to lose, so that'll be interesting.
The 4 ranking goes to Penn State, which makes them the number 6 seed, which would set up a matchup against Ole Miss. And the winner of that game would play BYU in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State at 8-1, Ole Miss at 8-2. Both these teams, I mean, I think it's pretty similar. Not a whole lot of style points. Ole Miss did against Georgia, but both these teams kind of have not, I would say, hit their stride.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how James Franklin does in a playoff scenario. You know, hasn't been able to win the big one. Can he do it if he gets there?
Texas, the number 3 ranked team, they move up to the number 2 spot in the playoff format. That would put them in the Sugar Bowl, awaiting the winner of Alabama in Indiana, if that was the case. You look at this Texas team, and I know that they bounced around a bit from Quinn Ewers to Arch Manning. The offense has got some weapons with Isaiah Bond and company there. That Texas team might be the most dangerous team come playoff time.
Yeah, they might, but what I'm looking for them is I'm looking for Quinn Ewers to give me a little bit of consistency, not just from game to game, but even within a game himself. You know, I like Quinn, but can he take them all the way? Can he win multiple games and ultimately lead them to the national championship? I don't know the answer to that question.
So we could pretty much tell you Ohio State will be the 2 ranked team, and the 5 seed, Oregon, the number 1 team and the number 1 seed. So that finishes the playoff picture where we have Ohio State, Boise State as a 5-12, waiting Miami in the Orange Bowl. Tennessee and Notre Dame waiting Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Penn State and Ole Miss waiting BYU in the Fiesta Bowl. And Alabama and Indiana awaiting Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Based on these playoff rankings that were just revealed a few moments ago, we'll throw Ohio State up at 5 here in just a moment. But, Joey, looking at the playoff rankings, I don't hate it, to be honest with you. I think that the committee did a decent job here.
Yeah, I don't think anything surprises me all that much. What I'm interested to see is how the SEC shakes out over these next couple of weeks, because you still got a lot of big games, and you got a lot of teams at 1 or 2 wins. And right now, there's 4 SEC teams that are in the college football playoff. Do you think there's a road to 5 or maybe even 6 for the SEC?
That's tough, because you're still going to have some 1-loss and 2-loss Big Ten teams in there. And then what do you do about potentially these Big 12 or ACC teams that factor in as well? And, you know, we throw out all these metrics, but we saw last year the committee went eye test with Bama over Florida State, which they got right, by the way.
They did get that right.
But how much is that going to factor in? Because obviously my big takeaway from tonight, is the committee needs to see more out of Indiana.
Yes.
Indiana at that number 7 spot, there's not a whole lot of room for error with this Indiana team. If they get blown out by Ohio State, if that's their only loss, but it's an ugly loss, that might not be good enough to get in.
Yeah, I don't think it will be, especially with what they've got at Penn State. And you can look at the head-to-head between Penn State and Ohio State. Okay, which team fared better against the other one? Now, Penn State did get to play them at home against in a rocking Beaver Stadium. But I don't know if the Big Ten is a conference that gets 3 teams in. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a path for only Oregon and Ohio State in that conference.
Yeah, very well could be the case. And there you have it. There's another look. Let's talk Boise State real quick. Boise at that number 12 seed, 13 in the rankings at this point. And I got to tell you, I loved what I saw from Boise State week 2, going toe-to-toe with Oregon. That game went down to the wire. That might be the best loss of any team in college football. And I like that they are being rewarded for taking on the challenge of playing an Oregon team. Boise State there in the Mountain West, they very well could have been content with a cupcake schedule to try to schedule their way in the playoff. Instead, they took the challenge of going on the road, of playing Oregon, lost a close game, and the committee's been rewarding them for it. They've been saying, hey, look, we know Boise State's a good team.
Yeah, when I think at the time, their immediate reaction was, okay, like, does Oregon suck? Like, what's going on with Oregon? And I think we should have been asking ourselves, okay, is Boise State really good? We had no clue what we had in Ashton Jeanty, and obviously he's been making his name known across the college football landscape over the past 11 weeks. But exactly, I think you said it perfectly. It's the best loss in college football this year, and all credit to Boise State. They could have scheduled a lot of easy matchups. They could have guaranteed them spot possibly into the playoffs, but they didn't. They wanted to go toe-to-toe, and they're being rewarded for it, which I think they should be.
Here's another look at the playoff rankings. One team I mentioned briefly, SMU.
I was going to just ask you about SMU.
SMU, I think, is in such a good spot. I know they're 14, but their one loss was non-conference to BYU, which was a close game. BYU 6 in the playoff rankings. I think SMU is in really good shape because you could drop one in ACC play and still win the league and still make the college football playoff. You think about, like, that program, too. Many years ago, before our time, given the death penalty, completely written off.
Yeah.
They go to the ACC this year, and usually when teams make that step up from the group of 6 to a power conference, there's a learning curve. You have to adapt a bit. And SMU wasn't even winning the American.
Yeah.
In recent memory. They were a good team, but not a great team. Now you look at it, and who would have thought SMU has a realistic shot of winning the ACC and getting to the college football playoff? Yeah,
I think Rhett Lashley is going to be a name that is going to be a lot of athletic directors' idea board when they're looking for possibly new coaches to hire.
And especially doing it in the state of Texas, too. He's showing he can recruit.
Exactly. He has to recruit against the likes of Texas A&M, even the schools like Baylor, and like TCU, you know, and what they've shown has been incredible, especially after the week 1 game against Nevada. And I don't know if you guys remember that one. They almost lost that game on the road, week 1. It'd be a totally different season. I think everybody was like, okay, how's Ole Miss going to look in this ACC landscape in this new Power 4 conference? And they've been showing people that they deserve a seat at the head table. What I'm interested in, and Tyler would love to ask you about this, is there a path for the Clemson Tigers to make it in the college football playoff?
If they win out, absolutely. Absolutely. If they win the ACC, they can still make the playoffs.
Do you think that's in their cards?
I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely.
Yeah.
That Clemson does so. I got a question that I want to ask the chat. Jack, I hate to put you on the spot here, but if you could do this for us. I want to know, chat, who is a team that is outside the playoff picture right now that you think makes the college football playoff? Joey, I hate to do this to you, but my answer is the Georgia Bulldogs. I think Georgia wins against Tennessee this week. I think they win out. I don't know if it's enough to make the SEC championship, but I think a 2-loss Georgia team who has the non-conference win against Clemson, they would get another non-conference win against Georgia Tech, who just got a win against Miami the other day. I think if Georgia wins out, they're going to make the playoff, and I expect them to win out. Who is a team that you think's on the outside that will make it?
I think Georgia is definitely a solid pick there because who knows if Nico's going to play this Saturday, and even if they've been so good against Tennessee in their past 7 years. They've had 7 straight victories by 14 points or more. And as much as it pains me to say that statistic, it's real life. And they're playing Tennessee in Athens Stadium, at home, backs against the wall. They need to win out. I honestly feel like Georgia's probably going to win that football game. And then they've got Georgia Tech. I think there's a good chance they make it.
Let's see what the chat says. The After Dark show says South Carolina. Jude says Georgia. Ty Man says Georgia. Brantley says South Carolina. Lamero says Colorado. Christian says Colorado. Jude says Colorado. Sebastian says, honestly, no one. Okay. Betrival says A&M. Ty Man says Georgia. Jude says Colorado. A lot of people in the chat talking about the Colorado Buffaloes. If they win the Big 12, they're in. But that's their only path. They have to win out and win the Big 12.
Yeah, and I think they have the ability to. One thing that's kind of making me give some pause in Colorado is they've played a lot of close games. And I think that says something about a team. You can look at it in the fact of, hey, they're winning close games. That's a really hard thing to do. But also you got to ask yourself the question, why are they in that many close games? Okay, especially opponents that they have much more talent than. Okay, so that's going to be the interesting thing when talking about Colorado, and I think the Big 12 as a conference. They're only going to get one in there, and it's going to be the champion.
We'll see how it all plays out. As far as that goes. Folks, I believe we're about to wrap up. Let's run through the rankings one more time before we call it a day and react to these and get our final thoughts here. Starting from the bottom, Tulane at 25, Army at 24, Mizzou at 23, LSU at 22, South Carolina at 21. Of those 5, I think Army's the only one with much of a chance.
I agree.
Too many losses. Hard to imagine anybody else. And with them, it's having to win out, if that's the case. It's still a tough path, but a path nonetheless. Clemson, Louisville, Washington State, Colorado, and K-State, all those teams, except for Washington State, really, because they're not technically in a conference, you pretty much have to win your league to make it.
Yes, I agree. And then we look at what's next. We got A&M, SMU, Boise State, Georgia, Ole Miss. And you know what, Tyler? I think I'm going to officially change my pick from that earlier question to SMU. I think they got a legit chance to win the ACC. I think every team in the ACC is very beatable.
Yeah, I think so too. And then you look at the bracket. The seeding is different than the actual rankings itself, as Oregon, Miami, Texas, and BYU get the top 4 seeds, with Ohio State at 5, Penn State at 6, Indiana at 7, 8 Tennessee, 9 Notre Dame, 10 Alabama, 11 Ole Miss, and Boise State 12. Joey, I know this is all going to change. There's a lot to figure out between now and the final rankings. But just getting these hypothetical matchups get me excited. I would love to watch all 4 of those first-round games.
Yeah, it would be incredible. You got a classic a team of just absolute blue bloods with Tennessee and Notre Dame. You get to see Neyland host a playoff game. You got to see, okay, is Boise State legit? Alabama, Indiana, you get to see a good offense against a great Alabama team. And then Penn State, Ole Miss. Who wouldn't want to see 2 teams that have kind of been in that 3rd or 4th spot in their conferences for the last couple of years?
Tennessee, Notre Dame, by far, would be the most intriguing of the 4.
I couldn't agree more. And I know I'm biased, but that would get my nod as well.
All right, grade the rankings. A, B, C, D, or F. I don't hate them. I'll go A-.
Yeah.
I don't have that's the one downside with going from 4 to 12 is I don't have as much to complain about.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I can live with these rankings.
I agree. I don't know if I would have changed too much about them. And then it's easy to kind of get it right when you have a broader scope and a broader brush to paint with.
Like in a couple weeks from now, Joey, when we do the final rankings, I'm not going to be mad about a team being 7 instead of 5.
Yes.
That's not something to lose sleep over.
No, it's not.
I think that they got the right 12. I would have changed the order a little bit, but I can live with that. How would you grade it? Jude says C. John Peterson, you might know him, says A.
Arkansas not in it. He's bummed about it. Romero
says A. John, I'm headed to Fayetteville for the first time in a couple weeks, going to that Arkansas-Louisiana Tech game. Give me some spots to go to. Ty Man says A. Get your grades in. The Dark Show saying A-. Get your grades. K says A. So everybody seems pretty content, pretty happy with these rankings. Joey, before we go, Why do people need to subscribe to College Football Now?
Because I can tell you right here, and I can be honest, we have the most in-depth college football videos on the entire YouTube platform. We're live for all the college football playoff rankings. We're live for the first one last week. You're watching us right now. We'll be live for every single one after that. So there's no better place to be if you're a college football fan than right here on College Football Now, powered by Chat Sports.
John says I need to go to Hugo's in Fayetteville.
He's not wrong.
Okay, I'll write that down. Appreciate y'all being here with us. No Harrison Graham this week. He had some family stuff, like wife was had a play or something like that. He had to go see, whatever it is. She is a teacher, so he has an excuse for not being here. It is late, so we'll let him slip by that. But nonetheless, Joey, I had a great time tonight. Always love talking college football. Best sport on the planet. I cannot wait for the college football playoff, but at the same time, I'm enjoying these last few weeks of the regular season too.
No, I know. It's been a lot of fun. It's been must-see TV for the entirety of this season. I'm excited to see the ways things shake out over the last couple weeks.
Joey, a lot of fun. There's the fist bump that you all couldn't see, but you got the visual. We'll do it all again next week. Subscribe now for continuing college football coverage. For Jack Lotteray on the ones and twos, Joey Peterson, I'm Tyler Jones saying so long. Have a great night. We'll see you next time.